next work session is the legislative agenda update. Ms. Spillman.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Dr. Casey has just stepped away. So it's hard to believe that we're in this time again, a year later, discussing our legislative program for the upcoming General Assembly session, but here we are. Special session just convened in April and then adjourned in September, so a couple months later, back at it. And time has not stopped. So as we're preparing for this upcoming session, there's just a couple of things to get started with, including taking a look at the political landscape that we're going into across the Commonwealth, but also hear what's happening in Chesterfield. Ahead of last session, we shifted Republican control in the governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general positions, as well as the House of Delegates into Republican control, whereas the Senate remains in Democratic control. That said, both the House and Senate have very slim majority margins, as there was just a net 7 position change shifting that control in the House to the Republicans. Looking into finances, FY22 closed out with a $3.2 billion surplus. So overall, the state is in an impressive positive fiscal position. However, most of those monies have a commitment or are obligated to future uses. Last session, the General Assembly adopted a new biennial budget. While that provides a base as we're going into this upcoming session in year 2, I do expect that we'll see significant revisions and amendments with the governor's proposed budget that's due out on December 15th. Next November 2023, all 40 Senate seats and all 100 House seats are up for election. Majority control in both chambers will be on the ballot. Adding more layers of complexity to that topic is really a result of redistricting, where 46 sitting House members and 20 sitting Senate members are affected. They've either been redistricted together, or there's sometimes double, triple districts with some opening with no new incumbent or no incumbents whatsoever. So what does that really mean for us going into this election year for the House and Senate members? Is anticipation of significant change, but a lot of uncertainty ahead as we enter into this upcoming General Assembly session. Do expect that there's going to be a lot of legislation, some budget items that could be potentially very impactful for Chesterfield and other localities, and so there's going to be a lot of time spent on defense, ensuring that we're evaluating these requests and analyzing those impacts effectively to share that information with our delegation as well as other members. Excuse me. In 2 weeks from now, we will have maybe some outcome of the U.S. House of Representatives race for the 1st and 4th congressional districts that now represent Chesterfield, or will going into January of 2023. Our current members in both the House and Senate remain in effect for this upcoming 2023 General Assembly session. Like I mentioned earlier, they are on the ballot in November of next year, but they will still be our representatives in this upcoming session. As a result of redistricting, in November of 23, the ballot will look different. Chesterfield moves from 3 to 2 Senate seats. We maintain all 7 House district seats. All of the district numbers have changed, and all of those newly elected House and Senate members will be seated in January of 2024. I'm just going to walk through a couple of maps to help show some clarity behind these shifts and changes that we'll be seeing. This is the current representation for the U.S. House of Representative districts. The 7th Congressional District covers the western part of Chesterfield, and the 4th in the eastern area. And so this is what's on the ballot this fall. We have now representation a little more equally divided among the county, west and east, and so the 1st district covers the west area and the 4th in the eastern area. So the 1st district with incumbent Rob Whitman on the ballot, Herb Jones and David Foster. In the 4th district, incumbent Donald McKeechin and Leon Benjamin. Our current Senate of Virginia seats are represented with the 10th District, Senator Ghazala Hashmi, 11th District, Senator Amanda Chase, and 16th District, Senator Jim Morrissey. Again, those remain in effect for this upcoming session, whereas on the ballot next November, we now are represented in the 12th and 15th District. So again, does not go into effect this upcoming session, starts in January of 2024. Our current House of Delegate representation is shown across all 7 districts. 27th represented by Delegate Roxanne Robinson, 62nd Delegate Carrie Coyner, 63rd District Delegate Kim Taylor, 65th Delegate Ware, 66th Delegate Mike Cherry, 68th Delegate Don Adams, and the 70th by Delegate Dolores McQuinn. And so what is kind of the takeaway here, looking at where our new district representation is the shift, I'll go back for a second, among the 65th in the western area of the county and the 63rd district. And so the 63rd district drops completely. Going into the election next November, we have lost representation from Delegate Kim Taylor, and so the 73rd district opens up as no incumbent in that district. Before I move into our legislative program specifically, are there any questions on this information, on the maps?
Board members? No, thank you.
Okay. Oh, wrong direction. So as we've done in years past, we're proposing that these guiding principles are adopted with the 2023 legislative program. Reviewing legislation and budget proposals requires us to look at this through a variety of lenses. These guiding principles establish the strategic direction for our position and have proven to be very helpful to make decisions quickly and allow us to react very quickly as those proposals are presented. As we analyze legislation that's been introduced, want to ensure that anything presented does not interfere with our strategic framework, that's Blueprint Chesterfield. And so having these established principles enables us to be most productive and really agile during session. Again, like our our guiding principles, these longstanding priorities that we are asking to be adopted with the program represent our core function, our core areas, as we're reviewing legislation and budget proposals, looking at it as how it would impact these areas. Preparation for this upcoming General Assembly session really began prior to the end of last session, and so there were a number of topics that rose, either as proposals were circulating or topics were being presented here locally. So following conversation with you all, with our county leadership, external organizations, members of our delegation, we've framed up some advocacy topics and legislative considerations. This list is not all-inclusive. It really represents kind of what we know today, and as we move through session and get closer, certainly expects that some of these will evolve. Yesterday, County and Schools Liaison Committee meeting reviewed our prospective legislative programs and recognize a strong partnership between our board and the school board, working together to collectively support one another through our programs. Last session, we saw some improvement to address the funded ratios for support staff, increasing the position count from 17.75 to 20 per 1,000, and then an expected bump again this year going up to 21. So to the extent that we can continue to advocate for positive movement in that direction, recognizing that fully eliminating the support cap is a big lift, but if we can make incremental progress year over year, we'll be moving forward. Furthermore, we're also advocating on the superintendent's budget priorities that have been shared with the delegation. On the county side, we continue to recognize some antiquated staffing ratios and funding formulas for our constitutional offices. We're advocating support for a comprehensive review of the compensation board. It's a complicated system. There's a lot to unpack there, but more broadly, seeking resolution for our appropriate staffing standards and funding for these local, state-responsible associated costs. With transportation, we're continuing to inform our legislators and prepare information for them so that they fully understand that they represent a locality with the second largest road network in the state. As such, transportation is a very important topic to us. when the state eliminated their share of the grocery tax. There were assurances last session for a viable replacement revenue source. Therefore, we're advocating for a long-term sustainable funding solution since one has not yet been clearly identified. Taking advantage of some of these federal dollars is certainly helpful, but we need a long-term solution. On the economic development topic, you'll hear this afternoon from our economic development folks, but there's really been some great positive business investment in our community, and the state's been a great partner to help us secure these deals, and so seeking additional funding for new investments is very important to our shared success with the Commonwealth. The Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development recently published an executive summary from the governor's summer listening tour about housing affordability. While there's no specific legislation proposed in that report, there are some concerning topic areas that include zoning, land use, availability of land, or regulatory concerns. And at this point, expect to see some legislative proposals in response to those topics, and so we'll be able to react. And as we analyze the limitations or caps on local land use authority. On the technology front, this is a topic that is really kind of behind the scenes, but as cyber incidents are on the rise and security threats continue to heighten, the topic's becoming more and more critical to our everyday operations. Just last week, Dr. Casey was appointed by the governor to serve on the Virginia Data Advisory Commission that was created by the General Assembly in 2021. As a county that, we've engaged with the state on various data topics, we've seen some very positive success recently, working together as we develop MOUs and other policies that will help pave the way, not only for us to continue engaging, but for others too. And so the goal is hoping to be able to deliver better services to our community. On the workforce topic, we are advocating for flexibility and options as hiring and retaining a high-quality, high-performing workforce is a challenge for us and other organizations. On local revenues, there's been open dialogue from the state that raises concern for our ability to assess and collect those monies. So our antennas are up, we're listening, we're closely monitoring to see what might pop during session, but expect to see something. BPOL bills usually make their way and find their way into every session, so we're trying to be proactive with sharing information with the delegation up front about how we administer our program, but also what all of these impacts could mean, not only to Chesterfield, but other localities across the state. So shifting into some legislative considerations, this topic's really poised between transportation and economic development. There's continued momentum on the Upper Magnolia site with many folks from our organization, external partners, state partners, working together, developing a multifaceted solution for options as we deliver this site. With that, the transportation improvements from the initial planning to finally getting things under construction, all of those pieces and parts are a critical role in the viability of this site. So we're exploring options that will help us develop a flexible path forward. We're currently working with the state and members of our delegation to craft some potential legislation that would help us to support the financing of this project. So getting this project done, as you all are well aware, is a commitment from local, state, federal, and private partnerships. And then wrapping this piece up, during our redistricting exercise, we ran up against an issue whereas the state code requires localities to draw district and precinct lines based on clearly observable boundaries. So during that process, it created a challenge for us to keep neighborhoods fully intact. VACO pulled together a work group this summer, led by Mr. Winslow as one of the chairs for the General Government Committee. And so we heard from other localities and registrars around the state that they too are experiencing similar issues. And so as a possible solution, we're exploring some legislation that would give localities the same permissibility as the current state code for congressional districts and state legislative districts, whereas they're able to observe boundaries based on communities of interest, giving us the option to keep neighborhoods whole. So we're continuing to work with VACO and the state on that topic. Brief run through of the calendar as we get up to the start of session. Yesterday we met with County and School Liaison Committee. Today I'm here with you all. We've been meeting with members of the delegation one-on-one, having conversation about some of the items in our draft program, but also an opportunity for them to share with us what it is that they're working on and if there's items that we need to be engaged on early up front. The board, you are expected to adopt the legislative program on the 16th. November 21st is the last day for committee action on any continued legislation from last session. December 1 with the pre-filing deadline. December 9th, we will host a legislative breakfast with our delegation, and then December 15th, as the governor's budget will be released, with the session to start on January 11th. So in closing, just want to circle back on a couple topics that we've been reviewing and discussing over the last several months. We've maintained active engagement with all members of our congressional delegation. We, this summer, attended the CHIPS Act event that was hosted by Senator Warner at VSU, in which a handful of other localities were invited to, discussing the prospective sites across the state and what the implementation of that federal legislation looks like. We gained a better understanding of FAST 41, which provides some expanded language to include fab construction sites on eligibility to expedite permitting and planning. We're continuing to pursue grant funding opportunities through the bipartisan infrastructure law. Unfortunately, we have been noticed that the award for the $58 million on the infra request did not make it to Chesterfield. Unfortunately, the state didn't make a lot of progress in that front at all, and so we're looking to get some information, understand why, and what would make our applications more competitive for future rounds. We've also dropped in applications on the Bridge Investment Program that addresses 9 projects with a cost of $23.7 million, as well as an application for the Safe Streets for All, requesting a countywide study estimated to cost $350,000. We've joined in with a coalition led by the Home Builders of Virginia to support funding for additional staffing with the Army Corps of Engineers regulatory program, between additional infrastructure dollars that are coming down the pipe with overall backlog at the Army Corps of Engineers. Hopefully this, if it goes through, would result in expedited plan and permitting reviews. There's pending legislation that we were recently alerted to under the Financial Data Transparency Act. It has the potential to negatively impact how we report financial data from both a resource and cost perspective. And so we're sharing those concerns with our congressional delegation, particularly since we are required by GASB and APA to have uniform reporting. So just keeping you apprised of some other things that are going on out there. And then sharing 2 opportunities for Chesterfield coming up. November 12th through the 15th, VACO is going to host its annual conference here in Richmond. We've worked with VACO to highlight Chesterfield on an opening tour with the VACO Board of Directors, focusing on affordable housing and showcasing how we've approached this topic, with a first stop at Winchester Green, members from the Better Housing Coalition, along with members from you all and staff, a second stop at Bermuda Estates to tour the model home with Project Home. So I think there's some great private public partnerships that we'll be able to highlight, and some affordable housing options that we'll highlight to others around the state. And then tomorrow, Mr. Winslow, along with some staff, will be presenting on the topic of economic development and the influence of transportation at the Governor's Transportation Conference. Chesterfield is the only locality that will be there presenting, so we're excited to share our story, the success we've had at Meadowville, and what we're looking to do with Upper Mag with other members around the state. And before I close up on comments, I just want to thank you all for your support and guidance. Additionally, we've added a team member. Casey Walker started with us last July. She's been really a force multiplier and critical player in helping us to craft our federal grant applications, working on special projects, and providing some really great detailed research reports. So big thanks to Casey and all the support that she's helping us to get done, a lot more than I think we would otherwise be able to do. So we've got a lot going on, but there's some exciting stuff too. Any questions?
I just appreciate the fact that we've now been more intentional about making this a 12-month process, Natalie, and I think, this has been your first full year. I think you're coming up on here. So anyway, big difference, and we're able to get ahead of some of these topics, I think, and that helps us as a county, because oftentimes I think, if we're all candid, we get frustrated by state government at times. Stymieing us or limiting us, or perhaps just taking too long to do things that we think shouldn't take so long. So anyway, this has been very good, and I sense that we're on the right path with this program, and appreciate your work, and thank you, Casey. Appreciate you. I see you in the back, all the way in the back. If you had another row back there, you'd be another row back, I'm sure. Thank you.
Joe, one question. On the VACO tour,
Mm-hmm.
are you not going to show them the Maggie Walker Land Trust?
They are not going all the way down there, but they will be talking about it. It's on their
We'll take
agenda to
them
talk
some
about.
pictures.
Yeah, they're aware.
Yes, sir. Mr. Engel.
I'd like to add that being on the board of the Crater PDC, I recently learned that we are blessed to have your department in our county. I asked we didn't have a person in the PDC anymore to give a legislative update, and I asked if there was any other members of the PDC that would love to have somebody from their staff come and update us, and I found that we were the only ones that were members in the PDC that actually had staff that could do that. So I appreciate you being voluntold to do that, and look forward to your report.